the last thing I want to say before I die tomorrow. They told us, go to school. Education is the key, they said. We sat in classes with no windows. We studied in torn uniform on empty stomachs. We believed them. Our parents believed them too. They gave everything. Sold cows, missed meals, broke their back just to see us wear that gown. And years later, here I am, graduated, jobless, hopeless. Turns out, the key only opens doors if your father knows someone. If your uncle is a big man, if your name already matters. And those of us without names, we stay outside, knocking, forgotten. Then they say, start a business. But even small dreams are not safe here. Kanjos will come, or even the goons they send. They won't just destroy your stall, they will scatter your future like trash. So, if I die tomorrow, maybe my parents will be given 2 million. Maybe that is more than I could ever give them alive. So, shoot me close range. Don't leave me like others, breathing but broken. Because in this country, we were told to dream, but never warned this would kill us. This country is not safe. Not for people like us.
Today, the streets of Kenya are ablaze with the unyielding spirit of a generation that refuses to be silenced. From the bustling avenues of Nairobi to the coastal vibrancy of Mombasa, from the lakeside resilience of Kisumu to the highland resolve of Eldoret, thousands of young Kenyans, Generation Z, are leading a seismic wave of protests that echo the heartbeat of a nation demanding justice, accountability and dignity. These coordinated marches, vigils and digital campaigns mark the first anniversary of the deadly anti-finance bill protests of 2024, a movement that shook the foundations of President William Ruto's government and exposed its brutal clampdown on dissent. As the youth of Kenya rise once more, the government's desperate attempt to stifle their voices through a blanket ban on live media coverage only fuels their resolve. This is not just a protest. This is a revolution in the making, a Pan-African awakening that reverberates across the continent and beyond. 1 year ago, on June 25th, 2024, Kenya witnessed one of its darkest moments in recent history. Young Kenyans, galvanized by the hashtag #RejectFinanceBill 2024, took to the streets to oppose a punitive tax regime that threatened to suffocate an already struggling populace. The Finance Bill 2024, widely perceived as a dictate of the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank, proposed tax hikes on essentials like bread and sanitary pads, further deepening the cost of living crisis. What began as peaceful demonstrations escalated into a tragic bloodbath when protesters stormed the Kenyan parliament, only to be met with live ammunition from police forces. According to the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, KNHRC, at least 60 lives were lost, with 82 enforced disappearances and over 600 arrests recorded between June and December 2024. The scars of that day remain raw, etched into the collective memory of a generation that refuses to forget. Today's protests are both a solemn commemoration of those who paid the ultimate price and a fierce demand for justice for ongoing atrocities. The recent killing of 31-year-old blogger and teacher Albert Ojwang in police custody has reignited public fury. Ojwang, arrested in Migori over a social media post and beaten to death in Nairobi's central police station, is but one of many victims of a state apparatus accused of extrajudicial killings, abductions and torture. Human Rights Watch has documented a chilling pattern of abuses, with security forces implicated in the abduction, torture and execution of perceived protest leaders. As the sun rose over Nairobi's central business district today, thousands of young Kenyans donned white attire, carrying flowers and waving Kenyan flags in a poignant flower and flag march. Vigils are being held in churches, community centres and public squares where names of the fallen, David Chege, Erickson Mutisha, Charles Owino and others, are read aloud, their stories immortalised. In Kisumu, youth chant "Ruto must go," while in Mombasa, protesters block major roads, their voices amplified by vuvuzelas and drums. Digital campaigns under hashtags like #June25th, #GensRevolt and #FufuAICC trend globally, with Gen Z leveraging platforms like X, TikTok and Instagram to expose police brutality and rally international solidarity. In a move that reeks of authoritarian panic, the Communications Authority of Kenya, CA, under Director General David Mugonyi, issued a directive this morning ordering all television and radio stations to halt live coverage of the protests. Citing Articles 33(2) and 34(1) of the Kenyan Constitution and Section 46I of the Kenya Information and Communications Act, the CA warned that non-compliance could lead to severe penalties, including the switch-off of media outlets. This unprecedented censorship is a blatant attempt to shroud the truth, to blind the world to the courage of Kenya's youth and the brutality of Ruto's regime. The CA's directive is not an isolated act, but part of a broader pattern of state repression. Last year's protests saw Kenya's first internet shutdown on June 25, 2024, a calculated move to sever the digital lifelines of dissent. Today, reports of internet throttling and targeted arrests of digital activists like Rose and Jerry, charged under the controversial Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act, underscore the government's fear of Gen Z's tech-savvy mobilization. By banning live coverage, Ruto's administration hopes to control the narrative, to paint the protests as chaotic and criminal rather than a legitimate cry for justice. But the youth are undeterred. They can ban our airwaves, but they cannot ban our voices, tweeted activist Hanifa Adan, whose posts have galvanized millions. This censorship is an affront not only to Kenyans, but to the Pan-African ideal of a free and informed citizenry. Across the continent, from Nigeria's Ahmed Ensars to Uganda's anti-corruption marches, youth movements have relied on media to amplify their struggles. By silencing the press, Ruto aligns himself with the playbook of authoritarian regimes, betraying the democratic aspirations of a nation that has long been a beacon of hope in East Africa. The international community must condemn this gag order with the same vigour it reserves for similar abuses elsewhere. Africa's youth deserve to be seen, heard and supported. To understand today's protests, we must confront the systemic failures that have pushed Kenya's youth to the brink. Under President Ruto's administration, elected in 2022 on a populist promise to uplift the hustlers, the cost of living has soared, with inflation and unemployment, particularly among the youth, who constitute 68% of the unemployed, crushing dreams of economic mobility. The Finance Bill 2024, though withdrawn after last year's uprising, was replaced by new tax measures that continue to burden ordinary Kenyans while sparing the political elite. Ruto's government has also been plagued by allegations of corruption and cronyism. The reappointment of discredited cabinet members and the creation of unconstitutional offices to reward political allies have fueled perceptions of a top-heavy state that prioritises the privileged few over the masses. The ethnicization of governance, with key positions dominated by individuals from Ruto's and his predecessor Uhuru Kenyatta's communities, has further eroded public trust. But it is the state's unchecked violence that has galvanized Gen Z. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights reports a 44% rise in abductions in 2024, with 29 individuals still unaccounted for. The Independent Policing Oversight Authority, IPOA, tasked with investigating police abuses, has been criticised for its inaction, with no convictions for the 2024 killings. The BBC's Blood Parliament documentary exposed senior police commanders ordering officers to kua, kill in Kiswahili, a chilling revelation that has yet to yield accountability. The killing of Albert Ojwang, whose post-mortem confirmed he was beaten to death, is a stark reminder of the impunity enjoyed by security forces. Teachers' unions, led by the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers, CUPIT, have threatened a national strike, while opposition figures like Kalonzo Musyoka and Rigathi Gachagua have condemned the killing, though their crocodile tears ring hollow given their own roles in past repressions. For Gen Z, these are not isolated incidents, but symptoms of a rotten system that views dissent as a crime and youth as expendable. What makes today's protests extraordinary is their leaderless, decentralized nature. Unlike past movements led by political elites or civil society organizations, Gen Z's uprising is a grassroots rebellion that transcends ethnic, regional, and class divides. Social media has been their weapon of choice, with young activists translating policy documents into local languages, creating protest anthems, and live streaming police abuses. The hashtag #HackGenZote, meaning all generations, reflects a mindset of inclusivity, uniting Kenyans across age groups in a shared demand for good governance. This unity has unnerved Ruto's administration, which has struggled to negotiate with a movement that has no single face. Government spokesperson Isaac Mwaura's claim that there will be no demonstrations on June 25th was met with defiance, with student activist Stanley Mwangi declaring, "Wednesday is a day of rage and courage." Attempts to infiltrate protests with hired goons or deploy plainclothes officers in unmarked vehicles have only deepened public distrust. The international community has taken notice. The United States, Britain, Germany, and other envoys issued a joint statement condemning the use of masked police and hired thugs, endorsing the protests as a legitimate expression of grief and dissent. Amnesty International has called for a UN fact-finding mission to investigate police abuses, a demand that resonates with Pan-Africanists who see Kenya's struggle as part of a broader fight against state violence across the continent. As a Pan-Africanist, I see Kenya's Gen Z uprising as a clarion call for the continent's youth to rise against the neo-colonial structures that perpetuate poverty, corruption, and repression. The Finance Bill 2024, with its IMF-backed austerity measures, is a stark reminder of how global financial institutions dictate policies that harm Africa's most vulnerable. The bloodshed that followed was not just a Kenyan tragedy, but a continental one, echoing the state violence faced by Nigerian youth during EndSARS, South African students during #FeesMustFall, and Mozambican protesters against electoral fraud. Kenya's youth are not alone. Their digital activism, from hashtags to live streams, mirrors the strategies of young Africans in Ghana, Uganda, and Nigeria who use smartphones to expose injustice and build solidarity. The arrest of Kenyan activist Boniface Mwangi and Ugandan journalist Agatha Atuhaire in Tanzania points to a chilling regional authoritarian consensus where governments share tactics to crush dissent. But this repression only underscores the need for a Pan-African resistance, one that builds legal defense networks, secure communication channels, and joint campaigns to protect activists across borders. President Ruto's rhetoric of dialogue and youth empowerment programs like Climate Works and YOTA rings hollow when juxtaposed against his administration's brutality. His claim at the National Prayer Breakfast to apologise for missteps is overshadowed by his refusal to acknowledge abductions or prosecute police officers. This duplicity is a betrayal not only of Kenya's youth, but of the Pan-African dream of leaders who serve their people rather than foreign interests. President William Ruto, hear this. You cannot kill an idea whose time has come. Your batons, bullets and bans may wound, but they cannot extinguish the fire of a generation that has awakened. Kenya's youth are not criminals, they are heroes, the conscience of a nation that demands better. Step down from your pedestal of impunity, hold your security forces accountable, and listen to the people who gave you power. The soul of Kenya is at stake, and history will judge you harshly if you fail to act. To the Gen Z of Kenya, you are the heartbeat of Africa. Your courage lights the way for a continent yearning to breathe free. March on, sing on, tweet on. The struggle continues. A luta continua.
don't get in the crossfire and I'll get the other behind. Okay. Hey, brother. ada TV.
Wah, jangan nih,